Hope and I drove all the way out to Massachusetts to convert this 2014 school bus into an RV. It'll feature a full kitchen, bathroom, sleeping area, and much more. So stay tuned, because for the next 5 weeks, we're going to be converting this bus into a client's dream tiny home. We were called in to convert the school bus into a home on wheels. We started by removing an old heater and cleaning the floor before adding the subfloor. We used insulation and half-inch plywood. We then got onto the roof to install the Dometic Fantastic fan. We started by cleaning the surface, then measured out where we would be cutting our hole. We used masking tape to trace the stencil the fan came with, and used the jigsaw to cut it out. We made sure the fan would fit, removed the masking tape, and added a thick layer of level waterproof caulking, screwed it in, and this is the final product. It's officially been 4 days since we started converting this bus into a tiny home. We started off the day by making some measurements and cutting out pieces of plywood that will fit the walls underneath the window. We chose to use wool insulation because we want to keep our client toasty warm in the winter, and we also want to keep the AC in the summer. We then ran plumbing and wiring before installing the plywood wall. We then decided that it was time to get the solar panels installed. We chose to use 400 watts of Renogy solar power because we personally use these in our tiny home and they work great. We then prepped the panels by installing the brackets that will hold them in place. And you want to do this before you bring the solar panels to the roof of the bus, because it's a lot more difficult to do this up top. Then we carefully brought the solar panels up to the roof one by one and had to measure out a good place to put them. We chose to put 3 in the front and 1 in the back. Once we figured out where the solar panels would go, we used weather-resistant caulking and put it underneath the metal brackets to help make a gasket when we screw them in. And this will make sure the roof doesn't leak. After wiring all the connections and screwing them in, we drilled a hole so we can run the wires while they'll connect to the solar monitor so they can charge the batteries. So we started the day by staining the wood that we're going to use for the ceiling, and we chose this color because it best matches the floors. We then started building a bench that will turn into a bed that also has storage underneath. And this took a lot of measuring and precise cuts since there is a lot of moving parts. Once we put the bench together, we started making the sliding drawers, got them installed, and seemed to work great. We then built the face for the bench and cut out holes so the drawers can slide through. And we're so happy with the way this thing turned out, because it'll double as a lounge area and a place to sleep an extra person, and have storage underneath. 2 weeks ago, we started to convert this bus into a tiny home. And after staining the wood that goes in the ceiling, we cut it out and started to install it. We also made these really cool drop-down storage drawers that go underneath the cabinets, and started to wire up the switches that go on the control panel, because this is one of the most tedious and time-consuming things. Then it was time to install the low-profile Dometic rooftop AC. We first made some measurements to make sure the AC would be centered, then took the gasket and made a stencil out of masking tape, then drilled some holes and used a jigsaw with a metal cutting blade and basically traced out the stencil. If you do this yourself, make sure you wear gloves and safety glasses because metal chips do get everywhere. Once we finished cutting the hole, we measured it again and made sure the gasket fit perfectly. Then clean the surface really well to make sure the gasket sticks to the metal and not the dirt, because we don't want this thing to leak. Once the AC was in place, we started installing the main control panel, connected all the wires, then installed the face of the control panel. That's the finished product. Come back for more. Welcome back to episode 5. We've got so much done since we started. We finished up the ceiling and started building a shoe cubby that will go in the entrance of the bus. We used 1/4-inch plywood and decided to make 3 cubbies, 2 up top and 1 in the bottom. The bottom cubby is 2 feet by 1 foot, and the 2 top cubbies are 1 square foot each. And I did this so you can put shoes in the bottom and other things like books up top. Then I decided to start putting the kitchen together, and we chose to use a thick slab of butcher block because it just looks badass in my opinion. The first step was to measure out where the undermounting sink would go, then use an ultra-fine jigsaw cutting blade and trace around the edges of the masking tape. We use masking tape to make sure the butcher block doesn't chip when we're cutting it. I then used ultra-fine sandpaper to give it a quick sand before installing the undermounting sink. Then I used my Lennox drill bit set to cut a hole for the faucet. Then vacuumed out all the wood chips before putting it in, and went underneath the sink to tighten it up, which is a really uncomfortable thing to do, but this thing came out so nice, we're really happy with it. So it's been over 3 weeks since we started this project, and we've got so much done, from the kitchen, bathroom, and even upper cabinets. Today, we started to install the floor, and we were most excited for this part because it really helps put the room together. We chose to use Prego laminate flooring because it's waterproof and we really want the floor to last. Also, Prego floors are such a breeze to install with their click lock system, so stay tuned because we're going to be posting the final reveal after Thanksgiving.